Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Schlötelburg. I'm from the VDE. The VDE is a technological association active in the field of electrical engineering, electronics, and information technology. Our headquarters is located in Germany, in Offenbach. It's near to Frankfurt. And we are active in the fields of standardization. We are a standardization organization, actually. We test technology, we certify technology, and we have as well a field of consultancy where we help manufacturers in order to go throughout all the regulatory issues. And of course, last but not least, we have various societies for technologies under the roof of the VDE. And so it is with the DGBMT, this is the German Society for Biomedical Engineering, and this is actually the bridge to EAMBES, if you want. So I'm happy to be here and happy to say some words to my focus topic. It's the topic of regulatory affairs of medical devices. I'm the head of the health department within the VDE group. Yeah, so medical device regulation, and behind this, actually, it's the question of how to bring a medical device to the EU market. So, in principle, one think of an approval process, basically, when being active in the field of placing a device, a medical device, on the EU market, but in fact we do not have an approval process in the EU. It's actually a conformity assessment process. And the difference is that the approach is slightly different compared to an approval. So first, the EU imposes certain legal requirements on medical devices. So right now, the law behind this, the legal requirement, is the MDR, the Medical Device Regulation. And then, and this is the difference basically, the manufacturer himself declares that his product fulfills these requirements. So we are talking about a self-declaration process, actually. But of course, that's not all. If applicable, you need a notified body as a third party to confirm whether the requirements have been fulfilled. So if applicable means if you have a medical device higher than risk class 1. So risk class 1, low risk, low means you do not need a notified body for the third party check. And if you have a medical device higher than risk class 1, then you need the notified body. The notified body is actually a private organization, and the manufacturer has to contract the notified body, the organization. Yeah, and then in the end, the manufacturer affixes the CE marking, and then he's allowed to placing the medical device legally on the European Union market. So far so good, but right now we have some, let me say, trouble with the whole process. Some trouble with the MDR, with the medical device regulation. This is the as I have said before, the law behind all this. The MDR is quite new, and the MDR stresses the whole medical technology branch a lot because the MDR sets very high requirements overall. This is the first problem. And the second problem is that a lot of these requirements are quite unclear. So it's really from time to time very hard to understand what, for example, a certain definition also of the MDR really means, and how to fulfill the corresponding requirements in practice. So this is very, very difficult. So the whole medical device industry, the whole branch, actually all actors being active in the field of medical devices, they are, let me say, quite stressed right now due to the MDR. And this comes together with the overall problems we have in the economy due to the corona pandemic, of course, and of course also to the war in the Ukraine, in particular, with respect to supply chains or so. So this, if you want, the economic stress situation is right now quite high. So, and if you take a look to the various companies being active in the field of medical devices, then I would say that in particular the SMEs, the small and medium-sized enterprises, they have really a huge problem because their resources with respect to time and money and competence also is of course limited. And if you take a look at the high and unclear requirements of the MDR, it's clear that the whole process is really, really expensive, takes a lot of time. And as I said before, is a stress for all the actors being active in the field. But in fact, the same would be true, in my opinion, for the field of science and for the field of research. The problem is that, or it's not a problem actually, it's a fact that usually science and research in the field of medical devices is applied research, because in the end, you really have the goal to transfer the results of your science work or your research work into a medical application, into a therapy, into the medical care. And for this, actually, you need the industry, you need manufacturers who are able to place medical devices on the market. Otherwise, the patients would be reached. And if you take a look in the MDR, you see that the law really stresses the whole product life cycle. That means a development of a medical device really starts, if you want, at day number 1. So when the first code is written, for example, for the software, or if the first material test was done, or the first work on the material or so was carried out. So that means that also in science and research, also in the universities or in research organizations, the documentation must be proper in order to can connect to the industry in the future. So in the end, in my opinion, also the universities and the research institutions, they have to build up competence in the field of regulatory affairs in order to really transfer their results into clinical applications in the end. And last but not least, the medical care, of course, run into perhaps into a problem, because if the whole process, or because of the whole process, it's getting so expensive and so time consuming, the companies will check very carefully if it is really possible to keep their products on the market. So we have in various fields of medical devices, we can expect that some products will be not offered on the market in the future. So what are the major issues with the MDR? First of all, as I have already mentioned, the definitions. It's very often unclear what exactly the meaning of the text in the MDR is and how to implement it or how to fulfill the requirements. Then we have a lack of harmonized standards right now. There is also a lot of legal acts like EU implementing decisions and other, let me call it, sub-legal acts, who would be necessary to specify certain aspects of the MDR, but right now we do not have most of these EU legal acts. Then we have the problem with the EUDAMID data bank. It's the data bank, or the European data bank of medical devices, that is needed, for example, for a lot of registration issues. But the EUDAMID data bank is not fully operational right now, so this is also a problem. Then right now we do not have enough capacity of the notified bodies in order to do all the certification work. And another aspect concerns the clinical evaluation, the requirements of the quality of clinical data that are needed to prove if a certain medical device is performant and safe have been increased strongly. And I guess it should be really a problem for a lot of manufacturers really to get this type or this quality of clinical data. But it's mandatory in order to get your product to the market. Another aspect would be the MDCG. The MDCG is the Medical Device Coordination Group. It's a group which was established by the EU Commission itself. And the MDCG has the job to assist, to consult the EU Commission in order to get the regulation implemented. And one of the major tasks of the MDCG is the publication of guidance papers in order to explain the various regulations and rules and requirements of the MDR. But I would say that overall the community or the medical device manufacturers, they are not very, let's say, overall satisfied with the quality of the guidance papers, and the quality differs very much. And from time to time, the guidance papers is not very helpful. So I think there is a lot of place for improvement, the quality of the guidance papers over there. And in the end, of course, one has to ask, I mean, are the goals of the MDR really reached? I mean, of course, the primary goal should be to increase the safety of medical devices and also the performance of medical devices, of course. But I think in the end, the major goal should be to really increase the medical care in the end. And I think this really must be carefully evaluated in order to can answer this question. And right now, I think I'm absolutely not sure if the MDR is really beneficial overall. So if you are facing this challenge, and let's say if you have such a project or a device or a technology or whatever, and you really want to bring it to the market, to place on the market as a legal manufacturer, and let us consider you are a small company or a young company, or a company who's completely new to the medical device field, like, for example, a startup also, or a spin-off company, which was founded by a university also in order to bring a innovative technology platform also to the market, to the patient, then you really have the problem. I mean, if you look into the MDR and you are looking for, let me say, a process or so, or some type of checklist or a plan or so, in order to get the things done, this will be really hard to find. I mean, it's legal text and it's not appropriate for this question or for this task. So what we have done is to create a roadmap, which we call a CE roadmap. It's actually a plan, if you want, which we divided into 10 possible steps, really to bring your idea, your technology platform or whatever, finally to the regulated market as a medical device. And first of all, of course, there is the use case. I mean, it's the question of what is actually the application for the technology. Lots of companies start with a technology platform, and such type of technology or such a platform could be used for various use cases, of course. But if you really want to go into the direction of a medical device, it's absolutely mandatory that you have to focus on one or more use cases, because you need, and this is the second step, an intended purpose. You need a definition of what exactly should the product do. Otherwise, it would not be possible to go throughout all the regulatory requirements without this intended purpose. Because with the definition of the intended purpose, you can answer the absolutely crucial question if the technology or the device is a medical device in the legal sense at all. But of course, you need to qualify your device in the legal sense as it is, if it is a medical device. So, and after that, you can answer the question, which laws apply? Of course, it's the MDR. Yeah, it's the basic law behind all this. But usually you have more laws or other legal foundations which play a role. Like, for example, if you would talk about a medical device, which is a combination with a drug or so, of course, the drug regulation plays a role, and there are various other examples for this. So, of course, you have to check it carefully. Then you have to define the risk class. As I've mentioned before, there are various risk classes. Low risk, class 1, highest risk are class 3. And the higher the risk class, desto, the higher the requirements of the MDR are. So it's a very important step really to define the risk class of the medical device. Then it's a good idea to analyze actually who does what in your company, project, consortium, or whatever is behind the idea or behind the medical device, because the MDR defines various economic roles and economic actors, and each economic actor, like the manufacturer himself, an importer or a supplier or whatever, has different roles, different obligations, liability obligations, and of course, different requirements to fulfill. And then after that, the catalog, if you want, comes with the let's say typical obligations for a medical device manufacturer, which are mostly given in Article 10 of the MDR. It's like, for example, you need a quality management system, you need a risk management system, you must perform the clinical evaluation, you need the technical documentation, you need or you have to fulfill all the registration tasks. You need an instruction for use, and you need a proper labeling of your device, and so on and so on. You have to fulfill it all, and in the end, you have to undergo a process of a conformity declaration in order to affix the CE mark onto your device. And then, what I have already mentioned on the second slide, then you are legally allowed to place your product on the market. But this is actually not the end of the whole process, because if the product is on the market, of course, you have to check continuously during the whole product life cycle what actually happens with the product if it is on the market in terms of safety and in terms of performance. And in the end, this would be the last step. Of course, it's very recommended to analyze if there are any, let me say it very general, specific aspects of your device. For example, is there a specific aspect in relation to the later reimbursement or so, where there's a connection to the law of or a connection to the requirements of the MDR or so. It's very helpful to address these issues also in the very early planning if you perform such a CE roadmap of your device. So, and what are the typical pitfalls? Based on our experience, if we have to do or work together with legal manufacturers, I think the most important pitfalls are underestimation, basically underestimation of the whole effort of the process and underestimation of the importance of regulatory requirements. Or we see that certain responsibilities are not defined, like, for example, who is responsible for the whole quality management process. So it's absolutely mandatory to define this. Or external competence is not used properly, or there is a focus on ticking of checklists, or it's very technology driven, and strategic planning has not been carried out also. So overall, I would say one of the main problems, in particular of younger companies, startup companies also, or perhaps as well in the field of research institutes who are very close to these regulatory issues, is this aspect of underestimation, and that everything is very technology driven. But it's really part of any medical device company, or it's part of the DNA, if you want, of the medical device company, really to know everything, to have the competence, and to focus really on all the regulatory issues. Yeah, and in the end, of course, how to avoid the pitfalls? Well, my recommendation would be invest in a detailed CE roadmap, make a careful planning, and reduce the risks by doing so. Yeah, and if you have a proper planning with, you know what to do, you know the requirements, you know the documents, you know the laws, you know everything behind it, you know the time which is needed, you know the costs, of course, then you reduce the risk and increase the probability that you will have a success with your device. So this was my final slide. If you have questions concerning this regulatory issues, regulatory topic, feel free, please write me an email. Very happy to answer your questions, and thank you very much.